when you read my material, I want you to really get a good feel for me and my personality. So what I did was I would interject my thoughts. Not only was I writing about things, but I would interject the thoughts that I had behind the things that I would write.
Basically, her honesty and her openness is the voice that she uses. How she speaks is how she writes. So what you read in the book, it's not going to use a lot of big jargon that you don't understand if you're not a therapist. It's going to use everyday language and sayings that we've heard as we've grown up and as we've gone through life to get her point across.
I am kind of slow when it comes to reading. I don't read a whole lot, but I did read her book in one day, which was very interesting. And one thing I will say about it, I remember the two characters, Kevin and Ann, in the first edition. And it was mainly focusing on control, which I always thought control as being something like very dominant or someone standing over you. But after reading her book, I found out that there were several different ways that people that can try to control you financially, so on and so forth. And oftentimes people, or sometimes people may think that when you think about control or relationships, you're talking about an intimate relationship. But after reading her book, you know, it kind of pretty much focused on various types of relationships, friendships, church relationships, and kind of point out ways in which people can attempt to control.
I want to talk about a little bit about Tameka Lancaster's books. I was able to go through both of them, which is very good. I found that one was more helpful when dealing with patients that are going through marriage relationship problems, especially figuring out how they control one another, or are dominant or submissive in the relationship, or passive controller, which I found very surprising when I was working with one of my patients, that the story that she spoke about in the book with Ann and Kevin was exactly what was going on with this lady I was working with. I was able to kind of help her describe the relationship a little bit better. We were able to watch how the roles changed in their relationships, and once the roles changed, they realized they weren't really good for each other. They were trying to control the other person instead of controlling themselves.
Our lives are based on relationships and dealing with various people, and we can find a book that will help you, a self-help book, because of course it's Tameka's writing, but it's just her speaking, you know, through literature, through a book, which that really has allowed us to be better people and to identify things that we didn't probably pay attention to at first.
Most of what I do is dealing with controlling of self, and that's my theoretical orientation. So having this additional information to be able to put it in words that the client could understand better was helpful in that sense. And I was very surprised to actually have it was almost like her story set down in front of me.
What I try to do is, when I work with couples, is try to get them to a place to where the situation is a win-win, where both people are benefiting from the relationship and having their needs met as best possible, and no one person is walking away feeling like he or she is just being sucked dry. To give you an example of how a relationship can get out of balance is when you encounter someone or are in a relationship with someone and they depend on you to satisfy or to meet their every need. Well, we all know that that is very, very, very draining. To stay balanced within your relationships so that you can keep your relationship healthy. You want to make sure that you're giving as well as the other person. You don't want to be in a relationship where it's rooted in selfishness, where one is taking more than they're willing to give. Now, I'm not saying it should be a tick for tack kind of a deal. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying make sure your relationships stay fair, supportive, and loving.
One thing that the book addresses well is the idea of viewing expectations as premeditated resentments. The principal cause for anxiety, the only cause for anxiety, is that things are not working out the way we want them to. Life is not going the way it's supposed to be going. Well, why is that? Obviously, it's because we have a certain expectation as to how things should be. And when that expectation is not being met, we get angry and we get anxious.
You know, one of the chapters that I have in my latest book, the title of it is, "If it goes past your nose, then it's none of your business." As silly as it sounds, you know, it makes perfect sense. You know, I can only imagine how silly that sounds to you all, but hear me out before you judge it. If it goes past your nose, it's none of your business. In other words, sometimes in life it's really good to keep the focus on yourself. You know, a good sign to know that maybe you're getting sick or getting emotionally out of balance is when you find yourself so focused on someone else and their behavior, his or her behavior. That is not a good sign, because what happens is you get reeled into someone else's chaos. And if you think about it, you are allowing someone else's situation or situations to cause you a lot of distress, where that person may have gone on and they hadn't thought about it as deeply as you.
Because of the book, I've been able to form healthier relationships and also work on me. It doesn't only point out, you know, looking for everyone else, or you're trying to pinpoint the issues with everyone else. I've pointed out issues that I have with myself, in which I've tried to come across as innocent, naive, but in the instance, I was trying to control.
Learn to keep the focus on yourself. When you learn to keep the focus on yourself, it stops you from being judgmental or condemning. It stops you from not doing things for yourself that you need to do, or doing so much for others that you forget about yourself. It's okay to be concerned or have compassion for others or to want to help others, but if it goes past your nose, then it's none of your business. Know when to use that and when to apply it.
And I can truly say that the book has helped me a great deal. So my sister purchased the book and she read it, and actually it helped her, I would say, get out of a relationship that wasn't healthy that she was in. And from that point, my grandmother purchased one of the books, as well as one of my cousins.
I can easily recommend Tameka's books to anyone from early teen years all the way up to the point where your eyesight fades and you can't read anymore. These will help, I believe, about all ages, especially the way they're written with little stories throughout the books of people struggling with real problems, and then hints and ideas and actual solutions to how that person either solved the problem or could have solved the problem.
I love cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, to make that simple and much more practical and relatable, I tend to help people change how they think about a situation. A lot of times it's your thoughts that's making you sick more so than the situation. It's how you are thinking about your situation more so than the actual situation. So if you can change the way you think about something, you then in turn change the way you feel. And when the way you feel changes to a more positive aspect, then your behaviors will change as well.
I was surprised at how Tameka Lancaster crossed different theoretical orientations in the book. I think this is a great book for therapists to add to their shelves to help patients or clients. And I think this is a great book for people in general just to read, to give them an idea on how to become more insightful and maybe notice these dynamics in relationships before it gets to a point where they end up in therapy.
I tell people all the time, you absolutely cannot solve a problem by focusing on the problem. You solve a problem by focusing on the solution. The only thing you will accomplish by dwelling on a problem or focusing on a problem is more of the problem. But if you're uncomfortable and you're really not liking what you're dealing with or what's going on with you, then what you want to do is fix it. You want to focus on the solutions. There are things that happen to us in life that we just cannot fix on our own.
People can change. A lot of people don't believe that. There is a concept amongst humans called the static view of humanity, which believes that the way people are is the way people are. They'll be like that forever. I don't hold to that. I believe people are dynamic. They're active agents in the world, in their own life, and they will change, and they constantly change.
You know, arrogance doesn't serve any purpose in group negotiations. Arrogance only serves to alienate people. Humility is probably the greatest of virtues.
If there was one thing that I would have liked to have learned from Tameka in the early stages of my life, it would have been to not be afraid to acknowledge when something is wrong. I think a lot of times when you grow up in tough situations, you learn to smile in the midst of it, and so you never deal with whatever's going on inside of you because you're always smiling, and you want this facade to be there to let people know that you're okay. But it's okay to let that barrier down and trust people enough to help them help you through whatever that situation is. And vulnerability isn't a negative thing, and it's not something that you should be ashamed of, because we all experience it.
Try to live one day at a time and stay focused on that, get through that day, and deal with tomorrow when tomorrow gets here. But just try to get through today. Try to be happy today. Try to deal with your problems today.
Don't give up. It doesn't matter how old you are, you can always change your life. Life isn't over until it's over.
I personally like it when things change, when a person is starting to get better, which I think that is really her main vision, her main purpose, is to help us get better and to identify things that are unhealthy within our lives.
You have to ask yourself, well, am I willing to allow someone to help me, or am I content with being miserable? Am I content with feeling depression? Am I content with excessive worry? And if you answer that with a no, then that is an indication to you that it's time to let someone help you. I want people to know that help is available. If you're finding yourself in a situation where you're not eating, you're not sleeping, you can't get your mind to shut down, you are really bitter and angry, help is out there for you. You don't have to live that way. The biggest thing is just know that you don't have to live that way. You do not have to live that way. Help is out there. It's up to you.
TamekaLancasterOnline.com is your 24-hour resource for practical, easy-to-understand information that can help you build and maintain healthy, personal, and business relationships. So go to TamekaLancasterOnline.com today and order the easy-to-read books or get the audio CD. You can also call 501-251-8330 to schedule an appointment for private sessions. TamekaLancasterOnline.com.
I like the way you write. I like those simple little stories that make very clear the specific problem you're talking about. Of course, I think maybe one of the things I like the best, I love your chapter titles.
Well, come on, man.